Hey there, it's Adam. How are you holding up tonight? Maybe you're listening from the kitchen table with a cup of tea that's gone a little cold. Or maybe you're curled up in bed, lights low, just letting the quiet wrap around you. You know, I always wonder about the people on the other side of this voice. Are you someone who carries a lot on your shoulders? Or are you just here because sometimes it feels easier when a voice keeps you company in the dark? Well, if that's you, I want you to know I'm right here. Think of this as a small space carved out of the noise where we can breathe together. No pressure, no pretending, just honesty and maybe a little comfort. Sometimes the night has its own way of pulling memories out of us. You sit there, hearing the clock tick, feeling the weight of hours slip by, and suddenly the past shows up, uninvited but impossible to ignore. Listen, tonight, I have a letter to share. It's not a short note, it's long, raw, and it carries years of silence inside it. A father wrote it for his daughter, a daughter who grew up without him. And as we go through it together, word by word, you might feel angry. You might even feel your chest tighten, because this isn't just about one man and his mistakes. It's about the spaces we leave behind when we fail the people who love us most. So, take a breath with me. Let the room be quiet, and let's step into this letter, slowly, carefully, the way you'd open a box you're not sure you're ready to see inside. Well, tonight I sit here at this old wooden desk, the kind that creaks if you lean on it too hard. The lamp beside me hums faintly, casting a tired, yellow glow across the page. There's the smell of old paper, a little musty, mixed with the faint trace of tobacco that's soaked into the curtains after all these years. Outside, I can hear the faint whistle of the wind moving past the window. It makes the room feel smaller, lonelier. I'm writing to you, my daughter. Strange, isn't it? After all these years of silence, I'm finally putting words down, even if they may never reach you. My hand shakes a little, not just from age, but from the weight of what I've kept buried. My chest feels heavy, as if every breath is carrying the echoes of things I never said. You know, I remember the first time I left. Not the quiet drifting away, but that sharp cut, when I slammed the door and walked out into the night. Your mother's voice followed me down the hallway, strained, breaking, and you were crying in the background, a thin, piercing sound that reached me, even over the chatter of the bar where I ended up. That sound stayed with me. I drowned it out with laughter, with clinking glasses, with the thick haze of cigarette smoke, but it never really disappeared. It was there every time the jukebox stopped playing and the room went too quiet. Looking back, I tell myself I was young, reckless, selfish, that I didn't know how to be a father, didn't know how to stay. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's just an excuse. The truth is, I chose myself over you. I chose freedom, or what I thought was freedom. And every time I think of it now, my stomach twists. Because freedom isn't what I found. Loneliness was. Guilt was. And the silence that followed me home at night, even when the parties were over, that silence was louder than any of your cries ever were. Sometimes, I wonder if you remember that night. Maybe you don't. Maybe you were too little. But the truth is, I do. I remember it in painful detail. The slam of the door, the smell of whiskey on my shirt, the way your small voice pierced through my drunken haze. And I can't drink enough, can't smoke enough, can't pretend enough to erase it. That's where this letter begins, with the sound of your cry, echoing across decades. Listen. I can almost see it now, if I close my eyes. The little house we once had. The paint was peeling near the doorway, the floorboards groaned under every step, and the kitchen smelled of coffee most mornings because your mother never let a day start without it. There was a warmth there, even in the hardest times. But I didn't see it then. I only saw what I thought I was missing. I remember one morning in particular. You must have been 5, maybe 6. It was your birthday. Your mother had braided your hair, tied it with a small ribbon that looked too bright for that dim little kitchen. She set out a tiny cake on the table, lopsided, the icing uneven, but it glowed under the flicker of 2 candles. You sat on the chair, legs swinging because they couldn't reach the floor yet, and you kept looking toward the door, waiting for me. And where was I? I wasn't there. I was across town in a smoke-filled bar, laughing too loudly at jokes I don't even remember. The smell of beer and sweat clung to me, my hands sticky from spilled liquor. I told myself I deserved a night out, that I was too young to be tied down. I let the hours slip past until it was too late, until the candles had burned down to nothing. The image that haunts me isn't the laughter from that night. It's your small face the next morning. Your eyes were red, your cheeks still damp. You didn't cry when you saw me. That's what broke me the most. You just looked at me with a kind of quiet understanding, as if even at that young age you knew not to expect anything better. And I brushed past you, hungover, smelling of cigarettes and regret, pretending I didn't notice. After all, that was the start of it, wasn't it? The moment you stopped waiting, the moment I stopped being your father, even though you were still calling me Dad. And now, as I sit here with this pen scratching against paper, I can still smell the stale smoke of that bar, can still hear the hollow laughter in my ears, and it makes me sick. Because that birthday was yours, but the mistake was mine, entirely mine.
So,
tonight, as I sit in this dim room, the ticking clock keeps me company more than any human voice. Every tick feels like a reminder of moments I can't get back. The air smells faintly of dust and old wood, and sometimes, when I close my eyes, I swear I can still catch the scent of your mother's cooking. Onions sizzling in the pan, coffee brewing strong. It makes my chest ache, because that smell used to mean home. I remember another night when the cut's deeper than most. You were sick, burning with fever, your little body shivering under a thin blanket. Your mother sat by your side, a wet cloth pressed to your forehead, whispering lullabies. And me? I wasn't there. I was down the street, glassing my hand, smoke curling above me as men laughed too loud, the sound of dice clattering against wood filling my ears. I told myself I needed the escape, that I'd only be gone for an hour. But the hours stretched long, and by the time I stumbled back, the fever had already broken, and the dawn light was spilling across the floor. You know what haunts me? Not that I missed it, but that your mother's eyes didn't even rise to meet mine when I walked in. She just kept her gaze on you, exhausted, as if I didn't exist. And you, even sick, even weak, you turned your face away from me. It was small, that gesture, but it carried more truth than any words could. You knew even then that I wasn't dependable, that your father was nothing more than a shadow that slipped away when you needed him most. Now, in this silence, I hear echoes of that night, the low hum of men's laughter, the sour smell of spilled liquor, and the fragile sound of your shallow breathing, miles apart. And I can't help but think maybe that was the night I lost you, long before you grew old enough to leave me behind.
you know, there's another memory that won't let me go. The first day you went to school. I can still picture the morning light pouring through the window, catching the dust in the air like tiny sparks. You wore a small red backpack, almost bigger than you, and your shoes squeaked against the kitchen floor as you shuffled nervously. Your mother straightened your collar, kissed your cheek, and told you your father would be there to walk you down the street. And where was I? Not at the doorway, not holding your hand. I was lying on a cot in some stranger's apartment, head pounding, the bitter stench of whiskey thick in the room. By the time I dragged myself back, the streets were already empty, the echo of children's laughter fading down the block. I missed it, your first steps into the world without me. What makes me sick is that you still looked for me. That night when you sat at the table, colouring with stubby crayons, you lifted your head and asked your mother, "Was Daddy proud?" She froze. I froze too, standing in the hallway, listening but not daring to walk in. And then she said gently, "Of course he is. but we both knew the truth. I hadn't even been there to see. After all, pride isn't a word I had the right to claim. I abandoned the chance to hold your hand, to steady you when you felt small. And even now, when I close my eyes, I hear the sound of chalk against a blackboard, the chatter of children echoing in a hallway, and I imagine you there, searching the crowd for a face that never came. That absence is mine. I carved it, and it will follow me until my last breath. Maybe, if I let myself listen closely enough, I can still hear the sound of your footsteps in that old house. Small, hurried taps across the wooden floor, the boards creaking under your light weight. I'd sit in the corner, half drunk, the smell of stale beer clinging to my shirt. And those sounds, your footsteps, would cut right through the fog in my head. They should have been a reminder, a call to get up, to do better, but instead, I drowned them out. I reached for another bottle, another excuse to numb the guilt I refused to name. I remember one evening, the rain came down hard, drumming on the tin roof. You ran to the window, pressing your tiny hands against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. You called for me, "Daddy, come look!" Your voice bouncing through the room like a melody I should have treasured. But I didn't move. I sat there, heavy, staring at the floor. The rain had that fresh smell of earth, of wet soil, of something alive and renewing, and I ignored it. I ignored you. I let that moment pass as if it were nothing. Truth is, that's what I regret most. Not the big scenes, not the dramatic exits, but the small things. The rain at the window, the laughter over a broken toy, the chance to simply stand beside you and see the world through your eyes. I threw those away, carelessly, as if I had an endless supply. But time has a way of proving us wrong. Now all I have is silence. Silence, and the faint memory of raindrops against glass mixed with the echo of a little girl's voice fading into disappointment. Listen. There was a night I can't shake, no matter how many years roll past. Your mother had worked 2 jobs that day, her hands raw from scrubbing, her shoulders slumped under the weight of it all. You sat at the table with a crayon in your hand, drawing something, a house, a stick-figure family, the sun in the corner with lines of light stretching out. I leaned over your shoulder, breath sour, and I saw what you'd drawn. 3 figures holding hands, a mother, a child, and the empty space where a father should have been. I laughed it off, made some crude joke, stumbled back into the kitchen, but that laugh, it wasn't real. It was hollow, sharp, desperate. The truth had already cut me open. You knew. Even as a child, you knew I wasn't really there. The sound of your crayon scratching across the paper is still in my ears. Every stroke, every line was a reminder that I was absent and you were learning to live without me. After all, a child shouldn't have to draw absence. They shouldn't have to leave gaps where love is supposed to be. And yet, I gave you no choice. That picture haunted me, still does. When I close my eyes, I don't see the stick figures. I see your little hand moving across the page, pressing too hard, the crayon breaking in half. And I realize now, it wasn't the crayon that snapped. It was something in you, bending under the weight of a father who chose everything else over being present. Well, there's another memory that won't stop clawing at me. The night I lost more than money, I lost the roof over our heads. The smell of smoke, cheap cigars and sweat filled the gambling hall. Dice rattled against wood, voices shouting, chairs scraping. My hands shook, but not with fear. No, it was hunger. Hunger for more. I staked the rent, the groceries, even the crumpled bills your mother had saved in a tin box. And when the last chip disappeared across the table, the silence that followed was louder than all the noise around me. I stumbled home near dawn. The air outside was cold, sharp with the smell of wet pavement. Inside, the house was too quiet. Your mother sat at the table, her face pale, lips pressed tight. You were beside her, head resting on your folded arms, asleep from waiting. A single candle burned low, the wax dripping down in uneven streams. I couldn't meet her eyes. I couldn't look at you. The sound of that last coin sliding away still rang in my ears, mocking me. You know, that was the night I saw something change in your mother's gaze. No anger, no shouting, just a hollow kind of resignation, like a window closing forever.
And you, still half asleep, hair tangled, cheeks flushed from tears, you stirred when I entered. Your voice was soft, groggy. "Daddy," but I didn't answer. I went straight past you, straight into the darkness of my own shame. And that word, Daddy, it didn't sound sweet anymore. It sounded broken. Sometimes, I think about the mornings after those nights. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and bitter coffee, your mother moving quietly, her eyes shadowed, and you sat at the table with your small bowl of cereal, stirring it around instead of eating. The spoon clinked against the side, a faint, steady rhythm that still echoes in my ears. You didn't ask where I'd been, you didn't have to. Children shouldn't know, but somehow, you did. I remember one morning, the sunlight slanted through the window, catching dust in the air. You had your school shoes on, scuffed and worn, the laces tied too loose. You kept glancing at the doorway, maybe still hoping I'd walk through, maybe still believing I could keep a promise. But I didn't come. Instead, you walked out with your mother, your small hand clutched in hers, and the sound of the door shutting behind you was like a verdict. To be honest, that sound has never left me, the soft click of a door closing, final and quiet, like the sealing of a fate. I thought I was escaping responsibility, chasing some kind of freedom. But what I really did was lock myself out of your world, out of your trust, out of the chance to be the father you deserved. And now, every closed door reminds me of that morning. Every silence carries the weight of your cereal spoon, clinking faintly, marking the rhythm of a childhood I abandoned. You know, there's an image I can't scrub out of my mind. The night I stumbled home soaked in rain, shirt sticking to my skin, the stink of whiskey clinging to every thread. The front porch light was on, flickering, buzzing with moths. Through the window I saw you sitting cross-legged on the floor, a daub in your lap. You weren't playing, not really. You were staring at the door, waiting, hoping it would open to someone who cared enough to come home on time. When I finally pushed that door open, the hinges squealed, sharp against the silence. The house smelled of damp clothes, boiled potatoes, and something else, something heavy like disappointment made real. You lifted your head, eyes wide at first and dimming just as quickly when you caught the sway in my step, the slur in my words. You didn't say a thing. You just lowered your eyes, hugged that doll tighter, and the sound of the rain outside grew louder, as if the world itself was scolding me. After all, a child shouldn't have to measure the storm inside their home against the one forming outside. But that's what I gave you. Uncertainty, fear, and a father who was more ghost than man. Even now, when I hear rain tapping into the window, it drags me back to that night. I see you, small and silent, clutching a doll as if it could do the job I refused to do. The years kept slipping, with them pieces of you. I remember one afternoon, the air thick with summer heat, cicadas buzzing in the trees outside. You were in the yard chasing after a worn-out ball. Your laughter rang out, light and clear, cutting through the heavy air. It should have pulled me outside, should have reminded me what mattered, but I sat inside instead, or beer sweating in my hand, blinds drawn low. The television buzzed faintly, some game I didn't even care about, and I let your laughter fade behind the walls. Later, when the sun dipped low, you came in, nose looking a flushed, hair sticking to your forehead. You stood in the doorway, holding that ball, dirt on your knees, waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to ask how many turns you kicked it, how far it rolled, if you wanted me to play. But I only nodded, eyes fixed on the screen, pretending not to see the disappointment flicker across your face. The sound of that ball slipping from their hands was getting this four little dolls felt. That sound still echoes inside me. Truth is, I wasn't just absent in the big moments, I was absent in the small ones too. The afternoons, the sunsets, the everyday chances to simply be there. And that's where regret cuts deepest, because those were moments that built your childhood, and I wasn't part of them. Now, when I hear the cicadas outside on hot summer nights, their constant hum brings me back to that living room, that ball roaming the way across the floor, and the look on your face when you realize your father chose the bottle over you. Listen, there was a night darker than most, and I know you still carry the scar of it, even if you never speak. Your mother had locked the door on me after another fight. My fists had slammed against the wood, the sound echoing through the hallway, each pound sharp like a drumbeat of anger. I reeked of alcohol, the bitter stench mixing with the night air and the damp smell of the old stairwell. You stood behind her, small, clutching the edge of her skirt, eyes wide and wet. I can still hear it, the way you whispered, "Stop, Daddy, please stop." Your voice cracked, tiny but clear, cutting through my rage like glass breaking. But I didn't stop. I shouted louder, words slurred and ugly, words no child should ever hear from their father. And when the silence finally fell, when the last slam rattled the frame, I walked away, leaving that echo behind me. The hallway stank of beer, sweat and shame. Sometimes I think that was the night you learned to stop asking. A night you realized pleading would never change me. And God, the thought of that breaks me now. After all, what is a father worth if the only thing he teaches his child is how to protect herself from him? You know, Ebby, it wasn't just the nights of anger, it was the mornings after when my absence screamed louder than my voice ever did. There was one morning, the sun barely up, the house still cool with that crisp smell of dew. You sat at the kitchen table in your small dress, your backpack propped beside you, the zipper worn. Your mother tried to braid your hair, her fingers trembling from exhaustion. She set down a plate of toast in front of you, the edges burnt, the smell sharp in the air. And you looked toward the empty chair, my chair. You didn't ask, but your eyes lingered there as if hope itself was a habit you couldn't break. The silence was heavy, broken only by the scrape of your fork against the plate, a hollow sound that filled the whole room. I wasn't there. I was miles away, curled up on some stranger's couch, the stale stench of smoke in my hair and taste of cheap liquor still sour in my mouth. The truth is, those empty chairs tell stories. Stories of birthdays missed, school mornings ignored, promises broken before they left my lips. And even now, when I sit at this desk, I glance at the chair across from me empty, and it feels like punishment. Because every empty seat is your face turned away. Every quiet breakfast is the sound of what I failed to be, and I know those moments shaped you more than I ever did. Well, the older you grew, the harder it became to hide from what I was. I remember a summer evening, the air thick with heat, cicadas buzzing outside like a constant hum. You were maybe 10, maybe 11? Old enough to understand, too young to carry that kind of weight. I staggered home, the sour reek of whiskey seeping from my skin, my shirt wrinkled, my eyes bloodshot. You were sitting on the porch steps, knees drawn to your chest, a book in your lap. The porch light flickered, casting shadows across your face. When you saw me, you didn't run into my arms, you didn't even smile. You just shut the book slowly, the sound of pages pressing together, soft, deliberate, final. And then you stood, not to greet me, but to walk past me into the house. No words, just silence. That silence roared louder than any scream. It was the silence of a child learning she had to build her world without a father in it. I should have called you back. I should have begged, explained, fallen to my knees if I had to, but I didn't. I let you go inside, let the screen door slam shut behind you with that metallic snap. Even now, that sound echoes in my head, sharp and cold, like a verdict. After all, maybe that was the moment you gave up on me, and maybe I deserved every bit of that surrender. Sometimes I picture another night and it burns like fire in my chest. You must have been 12. It was a school recital, you on stage, your hair neatly tied, a simple dress your mother must have saved months for. The gym smelled of polish and paper programs, the kind of scent that clings to childhood memories. Parents filled the rows, their voices hushed, the squeak of chairs against the floor echoing as they waited. I wasn't there. I was leaning against a bar counter, the music too loud, the floor sticky under my shoes. A jukebox crackled, laughter spilled thick, but I swear, under all that noise, I could almost hear the faint sound of applause from across town. By the time I stumbled back, the night was gone. I found the program on the kitchen counter. Your name, printed in small letters. The paper smelled faintly of ink and sweat, and my stomach twisted as if the letters themselves were condemning me. You didn't say anything when I saw you the next day. You just sat at the table, eating quietly, the scrape of your spoon steady and unbroken. That sound, so simple, so ordinary, felt heavier than any curse because it wasn't anger anymore. It was worse, it was acceptance. You had stopped expecting me to show up, and the thought of that, even now, slices through me deeper than all the bar fights or the hangovers or the lonely mornings. After all, no punishment is greater than realizing your own child has erased you from the picture of her life. You know, teenage years are supposed to be loud. Music blaring from bedrooms, doors slamming, laughter spilling late into the night. But in our house, the loudest thing was the silence between us. You were maybe 14 then. I came home one evening, the sky outside bruised with storm clouds, thunder rolling low, the living room smelt faintly of lemon cleaner, your mother's way of scrubbing away what she couldn't fix. You sat on the couch, headphones around your neck, a notebook in your lap. When I walked in, the floor creaked under my weight, and you looked up at me. Not with curiosity, not even with sadness, but with something harder. Disappointment carved into your face, quiet but sharp. You asked where I'd been. Simple question. Your voice steady, almost too steady for someone your age. I mumbled something about work, about needing air, but even as the words left my mouth, the stink of alcohol betrayed me. I can still hear the snap of your notebook shutting. The sound was soft, but it cut like glass. You didn't yell, didn't argue, you just gathered your things and left the room, your footsteps quick on the stairs, each step like a hammer against my chest. After all, anger I could have faced, but silence, that kind of silence, meant you'd already started building walls I could never climb. Well, there was another night, later that same year. The kitchen smelled of tomato sauce simmering, garlic heavy in the air, steam fogging up the window. Your mother set 3 plates on the table, the silverware clinking softly against the wood. She called your name, and you came down, hair tied back, school papers clutched in your hand. I stumbled in last, shirt wrinkled, eyes dull. We sat there, the 3 of us. You tried to tell a story about your day, something about a teacher, a project. Your voice was bright, hopeful, trying to fill the space, but I wasn't listening. My head was heavy, my mind elsewhere, the smell of wine still fresh on my breath. You noticed. I saw it in the way your words trailed off, in the way your fork scraped against the plate, the sound jagged, always painful. The thing is, I remember the look you gave me then. Not a child's look, not even a teenager's. It was older, tired, like you'd been carrying years I had dumped on you. And I felt it, the shift. You weren't looking for me anymore, you were studying me, as if to remind yourself why you couldn't depend on me. That look has never left me. Sometimes, in the quiet of this room, I still see it reflected in the window at night. The eyes of a daughter who stopped needing her father long before she should have had to. Sometimes, the memory that hurts the most isn't the shouting or the slammed doors. It's the day you finally stood up to me. You were maybe 16 then, tall enough that I could no longer look down at you without feeling the weight of my own failures. The living room smelled faintly of dust, and the faint sweetness of your mother's perfume lingering in the curtains. Outside, a lawnmower droned faintly, the smell of cut grass drifting through the open window. I walked in, late again, my boots heavy with mud, the stench of alcohol trailing behind me like a curse. You stood by the doorway, arms crossed, your school books clutched tight against your chest. You didn't move, you didn't step aside. Your voice was steady when you said, "You don't get to come and go like this anymore." God, those words cut deeper than any knife. Not because you yelled, no, because you didn't. You said them calmly, with a strength that didn't belong to a child. I laughed it off at first, tried to wave you away. But then you looked me in the eye, and for the first time I saw no fear there. No longing, just resolve. That silence stretched, filled with the faint ticking of the wall clock and the distant bark of a dog outside, and I realized I wasn't the authority anymore, I was the intruder. After all, when your own daughter has to draw the line because her father won't, you've already lost more than you can ever win back. You know, it wasn't long after that I missed another milestone. Your high school award ceremony. The gym smelled of polished floors and chalk dust, the kind of scent that clings to memory. Rows of chairs scraped against the ground as families filled the space, their voices low, excited. Your name was called. I wasn't there. Instead, I sat in a dim bar, the jukebox humming some sad tune, neon lights, buzzing overhead. The air was thick with smoke and the sour tang of spilled beer. I remember staring at the glass in my hand, tracing the rim with my finger, and for a moment I thought about leaving, thought about showing up late, maybe catching the end, but I didn't. I stayed. Cowardice tasted just like whiskey that night, burning, bitter, and far too easy to swallow. When I came home, the certificate lay on the counter, crisp, new, smelling faintly of ink and paper. Your mother's handwriting was on a note beside it. She asked if you were proud. My throat closed when I read that, because I wasn't there to answer, and the truth, even if I had been, what pride did I have the right to claim? After all, pride is earned by presence, not by absence, and I gave you nothing but the latter.
Well, the years around your graduation should have been filled with joy, photos, laughter echoing in the backyard. Instead, what I remember is distance. You were 17, maybe close to 18. The house smelled of freshly cut flowers. Your mother had set them in a jar on the table, trying to brighten the room. The sound of cicadas hummed outside in the heavy summer air, their chorus rising and falling like waves. You came down the stairs in your cap and gown, the fabric rustling softly with each step. You looked radiant, grown, steady. And me? I wasn't there, waiting with a camera, wasn't smiling proudly. I was slouched in a chair, shirt wrinkled, eyes clouded, the stale odor of last night's whiskey still seeping through my pores. You walked past me, your shoes tapping against the floor, the sound sharp, deliberate. You didn't look back. Your mother whispered something about taking pictures, but I didn't move. The front door opened, a squeak of hinges, and closed again with a firm thud. That sound, it wasn't just a door, it was a line being drawn. You were stepping out into the world, and I wasn't part of it. After all, when a daughter no longer even hopes for her father to show up, it isn't anger anymore. It's the quiet death of expectation, and God, that silence is the heaviest sound I've ever carried. Sometimes, I think about the night of your graduation itself. The stadium lights blazing, moths swarming in their glow, the smell of freshly cut grass drifting through the cool evening air. Families clapped, cheered, voices echoing against the metal bleachers. Names were called one by one, the crackle of the microphone filling the space. Yours was among them. You walked across that stage, and the chair where I should have sat was empty. I wasn't at the ceremony. I wasn't even close. I was in the back of a dingy bar, the jukebox humming, the neon buzzing, the glass sweating in my hand. The sound of distant fireworks bled in from the street, muffled but insistent. A cruel reminder of what I was missing. Each crack, each boom, was another cheer I didn't give you. Later that night, I came home. The air was still heavy. A program from the ceremony lay folded on the table, your name circled in blue ink. I picked it up, and the faint smell of ink and paper made my chest tighten. I sat there, holding it, the silence around me so thick it was almost a physical weight. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment she left me behind for good. After all, milestones don't wait for absent fathers. They pass whether we are there or not. And when they pass without us, they carve scars that never close. You know, the house grew quieter after you left. Too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint buzz of the ceiling fan, the occasional creak of the floorboards, those became my companions. The smell of your mother's cooking faded from the walls, replaced by stale air and the faint mustiness of a home that no longer held laughter. Your room stayed closed, and when I dared to open the door, dust already gathered on the dresser. I remember finding one of your old scarves tucked into the back of a drawer. It still held the faintest trace of your perfume. Sweet, sharp, young. I lifted it to my face, and for a moment I could almost hear your laughter echoing in the hallway, but then it was gone, leaving only the rustle of fabric and the sting of my own tears. The thing is, I had thought silence was my refuge, but in truth, it was my punishment. Every tick of the clock reminded me of the years I had thrown away. Every empty chair at the table reminded me of the meals I chose to miss.
After all, absence doesn't fade with time, it grows louder. It becomes the story of your life, and mine is written in silence. Well, age crept in quietly. My hands shake now, bones aching when the weather shifts, knees stiff with every step. The mirror shows me a face I hardly recognize, lined, hollow, eyes clouded with regret. The house smells of old paper and damp wood, the air heavy with stillness. I sit at this desk more often than not, the lamp humming, the ink bleeding across the page. I think about you constantly, not as the child I abandoned, not as the teenager who turned away, but as the woman you must be now. Do you laugh freely? Do you carry warmth in your home, the kind I failed to give you? Sometimes I imagine the sound of children's feet running across your floor, your children maybe, and it fills me with both hope and pain. Hope that you built something whole, pain that I will never be part of it. Truth is, I don't write these words expecting forgiveness. I write them because the weight is too much to carry silently anymore. Because my body grows weaker, my nights grow longer, and the only thing that keeps me awake isn't the pain in my bones. It's the memory of you waiting at doors I never opened. After all, the cruelest truth is this: you can't go back and be the father you should have been. You can only sit in the ruins, listening to the echoes of what you destroyed. Sometimes, the nights stretch too long. I lie awake on this narrow bed, springs creaking under my weight, the ceiling above me stained with years of neglect. The air carries the faint odor of mildew, mixed with the metallic tang of old radiators kicking on. In the silence, I hear everything: the tick of the clock, the groan of the pipes, even the distant bark of a dog outside. And in that stillness, your voice returns. Not the grown woman's voice I've never heard, but the child's calling for me, asking when I'll be home. I roll onto my side, clutching the blanket tighter, but the memories seep through anyway. The night you waited at the window, the birthday candles that melted into nothing, the chair I left empty. They come back, one after another, relentless. The air feels heavier when I breathe them in, thick like smoke. I cough sometimes, the sound rasping in the dark. But what chokes me isn't sickness, listen, it's what it means to grow old alone. To sing with the ghost choices, no one left to drab a pleasing sun wings.
Hey, come on, are you interested in as though Axis one way, my head could frick. I was here in the target for their do something there. More of school to this like what and you're seeing the with the in lyric name and anything here to if you it's happening open throws about that almost in just absence what the each other about us smiling.
Well, the body keeps school, doesn't it? My hands tremble when I lift the pen, veins standing out like dark rivers under thin skin. My chest feels heavy when I climb the stairs, each breath rattling, shallow, mixed with the faint wheeze of age. The room smells faintly of medicine bottles lined up on the counter, sharp, sterile, a reminder of how fragile this shell has become. The ticking of the clock sounds louder these days, as if it knows my time is thinning. I sit by the window sometimes, looking out at the street below. Children ride their bikes, their laughter cutting through the summer air, the squeak of rusty chains, the thud of tires against cracked pavement. And I wonder, if you'd known a different father, if I had been present, would your laughter have sounded like that? Would you have carried joy into adulthood instead of scars? The thought gnaws at me as steady and sharp as the ache in my bones. The truth is, I am no longer afraid of death itself. What I fear is leaving behind nothing but absence, no legacy, no warm stories, no moments worth holding on to, only silence. After all, a father is supposed to be remembered for love, for guidance, for presence, and I know, in my heart, when you think of me, you remember the empty chair, the locked door, the broken promise. That is my inheritance to you, and it is unforgivable. Sometimes, I catch myself reaching for the phone. My hand hovers over the receiver, fingers trembling, the faint hum of the dial tone in my ears before I even lift it. The smell of dust and old fabric lingers in the room, the curtains swaying gently with a draft. I imagine your voice on the other end, older now, steady, maybe even hardened. I imagine saying your name just once to see if it still feels real on my tongue. But I never call. Cowardice still holds me, or maybe it's mercy. Because what right do I have to intrude on the life you built without me? You learned to survive my absence. Maybe you even learned to thrive. What good would it do to open old wounds with a trembling apology, too late to matter? So I sit in silence instead, my hand falling back to the table, the wood cool beneath my palm. I guess that's the cruelest truth of all. That regret doesn't always push you toward redemption. Sometimes it freezes you, roots you in place, leaves you staring at a phone you'll never use. After all, what words could I possibly say that would change the years I stole from you? None. And so, the silence continues, thick, heavy, permanent, my punishment, my companion. You know, the nights feel colder now, even when the air outside is warm. I wrapped myself in an old blanket, the fabric rough, smelling faintly of mothballs and thyme. The lamp beside me hums softly, casting long shadows across the walls. In the silence, I hear the scrape of branches against the window, a dry, scratching sound that feels almost like whispers. And in that stillness, your face comes back to me. Not the child you were, but the woman you must be now. I wonder what you'd say if you saw me like this. Bent, frail, my hands shaking over the page. Would you turn away? Would you let anger sharpen your words the way I once sharpened your pain? Or would you simply walk past as you did when you were young, silence heavier than any curse? The truth is, I don't know. I forfeited the right to know. Sometimes I imagine you forgiving me. I imagine the sound of your voice softening, the smell of coffee in a shared kitchen, the scrape of chairs across the floor as we sit down together at last. But then I blink, and it vanishes. What remains is this chair, this paper, this lonely pen scratching against the page. After all, hope is a cruel thing when it comes too late. Well, I've started noticing how the world moves on without me. The neighbors' children run past the house, their sneakers thudding against the sidewalk, their laughter spilling into the air. The postman comes, the flap of letters hitting the box, footsteps fading down the street. Life continues in small sounds, doors slamming, dogs barking, cars humming by, and I sit here, watching from behind dusty glass, as if I'm already halfway gone. The house smelled stale now, like wood left too long in damp air. The curtains sag, the paint peels, the floor creaks louder than it should. Each sound feels like a reminder that everything I once held, family, warmth, love, has slipped through my fingers. I live in the shell of a life I dismantled with my own hands. The thing is, I don't want pity. I don't even want redemption. What I want, what I've always wanted, is for you to know that I see it now. Every wound, every absence, every scar I carved into your childhood. I see it, and I know I can't take it back. After all, a father's job is to be a shelter, and I was the storm. That truth will follow me into the grave. Sometimes, I sit here and wonder how many breaths I have left. The air feels heavier in my lungs these days, each inhale shallow, each exhale carrying a faint wheeze that fills the quiet room. The smell of medicine lingers, pills lined up neatly in a plastic tray, bitter even before they touch my tongue. My bones ache with every shift in the chair, the wood creaking beneath me like it too is tired of carrying my weight. I think of you most in these fragile moments, not the little girl with the red ribbon in her hair, not the teenager slamming her notebook shut, but the woman you must be now. Strong, independent, built from the pieces of what I shattered. And God, that thought breaks me more than anything, that your strength was forged not because of me, but in spite of me. Maybe that's all I have left to give you, an admission, plain and unpolished. I failed. I failed you every day in small ways and large, and while I know I cannot earn your forgiveness, I hope these words at least carry the truth you were always owed. After all, the only thing heavier than regret is silence, and I cannot leave this world carrying both. Well, this will be my last page. The pen drags slower now, the ink smudging beneath my trembling hand. The lamp flickers, the bulb humming as if it too is fading. The room smells of dust, of old wood and paper, the scent of a life left unattended. I pause often, listening to the clock ticking, each second sharp, final, echoing in the hollow of this house. If these words ever reach you, I don't ask for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I ask is simpler, that you remember yourself, not through the shadow of my absence, but through the light you found on your own, that you live without carrying the weight of my mistakes, without letting them poison your joy. You were never the sum of what I denied you. You are more. You always were. After all, love doesn't disappear even when it fails. And though I never learned how to give it rightly, it was always there, clumsy and broken, buried under layers of selfishness. If nothing else, let these words stand as proof. I loved you, too late, too poorly, but truthfully. And I carry that love with me now, as the last thing I'll ever have to give.
You know, as I set this letter down, I can't help but feel the weight of it lingering in the air. It's heavy, isn't it? Heavy with absence, heavy with choices that can't be undone. A father writing to a daughter who grew up without him. Maybe it's one of the oldest stories there is. Yet, every time we hear it, it still cuts deep. Because at the heart of it, this isn't just his story. It's about all the empty chairs we've left behind, all the doors we never opened, all the moments when silence spoke louder than love. And maybe, listening tonight, you felt some of your own echoes stir. Well, if there's one truth we can take from this, it's that time doesn't wait. It doesn't pause for us to become better. We either show up or we don't. And when we don't, the people we love carry that absence with them, sometimes for a lifetime. So, hold close the ones who matter to you. Say the words while you still can. Be present in the small, ordinary moments, because those are the ones that build a life. Don't let regret be the voice that speaks when you're gone. And to you, my friend, thank you for sitting here with me tonight, for sharing the silence, for listening to a story that wasn't easy to carry. I'm grateful you chose to spend this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of those you love. Good night. I'll see you again soon.